Hi everyone, and welcome to a new edition of Diálogo SOFOFA. I am Alan García, Executive Director of SOFOFA Hub, and I have the privilege, it is an honor today to be with Isaac Kohlberg, Chief Technology Officer of Harvard University. Isaac is an expert in technology transfer with a great knowledge also in biotechnology, and we have the privilege to have him also as part of our board, as a board member in the CBT, that is the Center of Translational Biotechnology, developed by SOFOFA Hub and supported by CORFO as part of the Chilean strategy for biotechnology to 2030. Hi, Isaac.
Hi, Alan.
Thank you very much for accepting this interview. I am curious to know, Isaac, what motivated you in the first place to follow this career, and what drives you today to come all the way down to Chile and share this your experience with us?
So first of all, Alan, thank you for inviting me to participate with you in this interview, and thank you and the SOFOFA leadership of inviting me to join your board. Today we had our first board meeting, and I found the meeting to be very energetic and productive. So yes, I've been in technology transfer for many, many years. I've started my career in this area back in 1980 in Israel, and it has been almost 40 years that I've been leading technology transfer organizations both in Israel and in the United States. What attracted me to do this at the first place? So let me rewind the tape back to late 70s, early 80s, late 70s actually. When I came to Israel from my MBA program, I was looking for a position that will combine my business skills and into a not-for-profit organization. I was interested in bringing business acumen to a not-for-profit entity that has a significant, a huge impact on society. And technology transfer is exactly what it is. It's an area that combines business and business transactions, creating new companies, licensing technologies, protecting intellectual property, but all for a not-for-profit organization. And the main goal is not just making money. The main goal is having impact on society globally and advancing mankind in many, many ways. So that's what attracted me early on. As to your second question, why Chile? So I've always felt that there is some resemblance for me between Chile and Israel. Israel is also surrounded by geopolitical challenges, and Chile is surrounded by geographical challenges. Two small countries with great institutions of higher learning, with great universities, with a lot of innovation in the academic sector that needs the platforms and the vehicles to transfer it to industry. And while Israel has developed these platform as vehicles many, many years ago, Chile is still in the stage where such platforms and vehicles are being developed. So I felt this is an area that I could really contribute to and have an impact on what is happening in this great country.
That's great. You know, we always see Israel as a model for innovation. So it's really an honor for you to see Chile as an opportunity to transform into that. Many of our viewers might not fully understand the concept of technology transfer, the technical concept. How would you explain that in a simple way?
So technology transfer, that I'm focusing on is the transfer of technology between academic institutions, research institutions, academic health centers, academic medical centers, and the for-profit sector, primarily startup companies and established companies. Technology transfer also happens between smaller companies and larger companies. And what we mean by that are the business arrangements by which technologies and intellectual property that protects the technology is transferred from one organization to the other. And it involves few pieces to this. So there is the intellectual property element, there is the contractual element, there is the people's element, because technology is not being transferred through documents. It takes people to transfer the technology. There are challenges of adaptation. There are challenges of how does one internalize the technology once it's being transferred. All these elements together are called technology transfer. And this is a term that was coined many years ago, probably almost 40 years ago in the United States. At the beginning of the 80s, the United States enacted a law which is called the Bayh-Dole Act, that gave universities the right to own intellectual property emanating from their research. However, long before that, already at the late 50s, institutions in Israel have developed technology transfer companies to transfer technologies from the university and the research institutions to the private sector, with the goal of, and this is also true with respect to Chile and why SOFOFA has created this center, with the goal of advancing economic development of the country. So apart from a societal mission, a global societal mission, in many cases the technology transfer program has a regional economic development goal by creating industries and providing employment to the economy of the country.
Yeah, that's the way CORFO sees it also here in Chile, and that's why CORFO has been supporting this program as well as many other ones. What you say about connecting people, I find very interesting. One of our main objectives at SOFOFA Hub and the CBT is to connect large enterprises with entrepreneurs, with inventors, with innovators, and to create value for their business in a win-win model. However, businesses frequently complain that researchers, entrepreneurs, inventors use a complex language, and they operate at a speed that many times is incompatible with the business world. So, based on your experience as Chief Technology Officer at Harvard University, and also your business experience, what strategies have you seen have proven to be more effective to be able to close that gap?
So the technology transfer and technology transfer programs, and in some places they are called differently, because actually the term technology transfer is an older term. Many institutions are now using are coining it differently. For example, even at Harvard, my office is no longer called Harvard Technology Transfer Office. It used to be called Technology Transfer. It's now called the Office of Technology Development, because we are engaged in more than just transferring the technology. We're also engaged in programs to develop the technology to the point that it could be transferred, because not every technology can be transferred. Certain technologies are so embryonic in their nature that they require further development. Other universities, by the way, have been starting to call this programs of innovation, because you want also to impact the mindset of the scientists, of the researchers, of the students, so that you focus more on innovation. So they are calling it centers of innovation, not just mere technology transfer, which is an old-fashioned term. But going back to your question, So this activity sits in the middle of two very, very distinct cultures. The culture of an academic institution and the culture of a university, of a not-for-profit, and the culture of a for-profit entity. In the culture of a for-profit entity, you have to drive the organization towards shareholders' value. Not the case in an academic organization. The culture of for-profit is more about keeping technologies more secretive. The culture in the not-for-profit, it's all about publication and dissemination. And what is derived from that, within a for-profit entity, there is a different sense of urgency than in the not-for-profit entity. People are even compensated differently. So any successful technology transfer or a technology development, whatever you call this activity, any key to its success depends on the understanding of these various cultures and bridging between them. And if you do not appreciate these two cultures and you learn how to bridge them, you will not be successful. So what have we done at Harvard? What we have done, we have created an organization that really runs like a startup. It's an organization that is not run in terms of its organizational behavior and organizational design like any other administrative unit within the university. It has a different mindset, has a different culture. The people that have been hired to my program all come from industry, all of them. They all have significant industry experience. So they understand these two cultures, and they are being able to translate this complexity to the for-profit and bring from the needs of the for-profit into the academic arena, so that they are a dialogue, a productive dialogue, a real dialogue, a good conversation can be created. But it is true, it does require initially some translators. You need to chaperone this discussion. And once you chaperone it, then it opens up. And then great collaborations are developed. So that's what we have done at Harvard.
That's great. Well, I think that's part of our challenges here, and it's great to have your experience help us in this path. We're only just starting here. You mentioned the different incentive models and the different interests these two different worlds have. At SOFOFA Hub, we also see great opportunities to convene and convoke corporates to address industry challenges in a collective manner. Not on their own, but in a collective manner. And as SOFOFA, we have that, we can convene this because we're an association. One example for this kind of challenges, is the circular economy. And where companies face both regulatory and also market challenges. For instance, we recently heard the London Metal Exchange announced it will only be trading responsibly sourced metals by 2022. So this is a really big challenge for the industry. Do you think this kind of challenges and these kind of conversations could bring these worlds together? Do you see an interest, for example, in the scientific community to work together on these kind of issues? And do you see, as I do, an opportunity here to join both worlds in a common purpose that goes beyond the for-profit and non-for-profit philosophy you were mentioning previously?
Definitely. I believe that syndicates of companies here in Chile, once they will identify their needs, could definitely build some very powerful bridges with the academic institutions to address some of these challenges that the circular economy presents. Absolutely.
That's great. Well, that's what we're...
That's I think what you're trying to do. And I think SOFOFA is ideally positioned to do this because of its power of convening, being like a neutral, like the UN. So like the UN, it can bring companies and academic institutions to work together in a way that individual organizations cannot do.
And regarding that, Isaac, do you see entrepreneurs as a bridging entity also? Do you think entrepreneurs can play an important role by bringing knowledge and technology from the academia, from research centers, technology centers, and help bridge this knowledge and this technology to the industry? In your experience, has this been a conversation between the academia and the private sector only, or do entrepreneurs also?
So in the conversations between existing companies and academic institutions, entrepreneurs play a very small. They hardly play any role. They play a very small role. What then one has to find is the entrepreneurs within the corporations, those unique individuals that reside within the corporations, that are willing to become the agents of change within these large corporations. And it will behoove on the leadership of these large corporations that are interested in these interactions to identify these entrepreneurs within their entities to undertake this kind of relationship. Entrepreneurs usually play a role in the creation of startup companies. Now, in this relationship between academic institutions and corporations, startups could be the bridge in many cases. So in the United States, there are many cases where the breakthroughs technologies, before they have been introduced to large corporations, a startup has been created to further develop them. And then, once they further develop them, these startups are creating the tech transfer activities between themselves based on the technology that came from the academic institutions and the large corporations. And in respect to startups, that's when entrepreneurs play a major role.
I see. Yes, they've been talking a lot about entrepreneurs and finding the people within the business units that will be open to bring these technologies into the company and facilitate.
And then the question is, how do you incentivize them?
And how do you find them?
And how do you find them in the first place, yes.
Isaac, well, it is really a privilege for us to have you, walking this path with us at SOFOFA Hub and specifically at the CBT with your biotech background and knowledge. And this is a startup, as you said, on its own, and
CBT itself.
The CBT, exactly, and startups normally start with young people with little experience. So to be able to start this with someone with your experience and your knowledge is really a privilege. So, first of all, thank you for being with us in the CBT, and thank you very much for accepting this interview. To all our viewers, thank you also for being with us in this edition of Diálogo SOFOFA, and stay tuned for our next edition. Bye-bye.